Hello, I'm Kaiser and welcome to Moose Reads. Before I get started, I want to say that the opinions that I give here are my own opinions. They are extremely subjective. If I dislike a book, it is not a reflection on the author, and it is not a reflection on people who do like it. Different people have different tastes, and that's okay. Today, I will be doing my February wrap-up. In February, I read 10 books and DNF'd 3 books. Excluding the DNFs, they totaled 3,069 pages, with an average of 307 pages per book and 110 pages per day. As always, full reviews for all of the books are either posted already or will be soon. There should be chapters marked so you can easily skip around. The first book I read in February was One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. This is a queer paranormal romance. The description says, for cynical 23-year-old August, moving to New York City is supposed to prove her right, that things like magic and cinematic love stories don't exist, and the only smart way to go through life is alone. She can't imagine how waiting tables at a 24-hour pancake diner and moving in with too many weird roommates could possibly change that. And there's certainly no chance of her subway commute being anything more than a daily trudge through boredom and electrical failures. But then there's this gorgeous girl on the train. Jane, dazzling, charming, mysterious, impossible Jane. Jane with her rough edges and swoopy hair and soft smile, showing up in a leather jacket to save August's day when she needed it most. August's subway crush becomes the best part of her day, but pretty soon she discovers there's one big problem. Jane doesn't just look like an old-school punk rocker. She's literally displaced in time from the 1970s, and August is going to have to use everything she tried to leave in her own past to help her. Maybe it's time to start believing in some things after all. I gave this book 4 stars. I read this for my book club, and I was extremely surprised to like this book as much as I did. Going into it, there were a plethora of reasons why I figured I would not like it very much at all, and I was pleasantly surprised. I liked the characters more than I thought I would, and the romance was pretty endearing. I also thought the plot unfolded pretty well. I had 3 major nitpicks with this book. First, because Jane is trapped on the subway, the progress she and August can have in their relationship is rather inhibited, but not inhibited enough to avoid disgusting subway sex. There was what I assume was meant to be a twist or surprise reveal that I saw coming miles away, and it was frustrating how long it took the characters to get there. And lastly, there was a fake-out near the end that felt pointlessly dramatic. Still, overall I had a good time with it, which means I might give McQuiston another go in the future. The second book was The Last Temptations of Iago Wick by Jennifer Rainey. This is the first in the Lovelace and Wick series. It is a queer paranormal fantasy. The description says, the city of Marlow, Massachusetts is a lovely place to settle down. Just ask its 2 resident demons. For centuries, Iago Wick and his partner Dante Lovelace have meddled in the affairs of man for the benefit of hell, and had a damnably good time doing it. Everything changes when a peculiar demon hunter with a murky past comes to Marlow and sets his sights on Iago. Mr. Wick is all too happy to grant him a game of cat and mouse. After all, a little distraction from his hellish duties does an old demon good. But soon, Iago and Dante find themselves entangled in the mystery surrounding the strange hunter, and the line between danger and excitement becomes a blurry one. What happens when Iago gets a little too close? Is working for hell really all it's cracked out to be? And why is the idea of free will suddenly so appealing? I gave this 4 stars as well. This was a reread for me. According to Goodreads and Storygraph, I read this in 2022, which is definitely wrong, as I'm sure I read it before I moved back home. But whenever I read it, it stuck with me enough that I wanted to pick up the rest of the series. I put books 2 and 3 on my Christmas list and received them, so it was time to work my way through the series. I liked this book the first time, I liked it again the second time. Despite what the description says, this book is mostly about Iago, a tempter, applying himself to the task of claiming the souls of each member of a secret society in his local town. The book opens with him finishing with the first temptation and carries on until he's down to the last man standing. It's an interesting enough story, but not something to rave about. The main draw for this book, and largely for this series, is the characters. Iago and Dante are both charming, and they are equally charming together. So the third book I read was Binding Dante Lovelace by Jennifer Rainey. This is the second book in the Lovelace and Wick series. It is also a queer paranormal fantasy. The description says, Dante Lovelace is not accustomed to waking up in unfamiliar beds, and he's even less accustomed to working with witches. Imagine his displeasure when both happen consecutively. After being spirited away, i.e. kidnapped, Dante finds himself at the mercy of Miss Beatrice Dickens, a witch and spiritualist who has placed a binding spell upon him to strengthen her own powers. As demons must, Dante begrudgingly surrenders to his fate, but soon discovers the witch needs him for protection. Zero Bancroft, an uncommonly dangerous man, wants to release an uncommonly dangerous beast in Beatrice's keeping, a soul eater. It's up to Dante and Beatrice to stop him. If that weren't enough, Dante must also contend with his partner Iago Wick, who longs to defect and abandon his hellish duties, and he wants Dante to follow. What's a demon to do? With some new companions, and a certain inventor, on their side, Mr. Lovelace and Mr. Wick must face magic, hunters, automatons, and even uncomfortable family reunions. Can they protect the world from Bancroft's mad scheme, or is the apocalypse just around the bend? Once again, 4 stars, but I wasn't as wild about it as the first book. While Dante and Iago are still a delight, this book felt like a major shift. Temptations felt like a fairly standard, historical paranormal fantasy, with very small steampunk elements entirely focused on a single character. Here in the second book, we dive fully into the steampunk setting, although the steampunk elements were still mostly set dressing. I also disliked that this book felt like it had shifting goals. The book starts with Dante needing to throw off the witch that bound him, then the goal becomes fighting the demon hunter, and then the dangerous beast. Any one of these could have been a good plot on its own, so cramming all 3 of them in just made this book feel all over the place. I also felt like Iago's goals took a bit of a shift in this book. I'm willing to accept that Rainey was angling towards this shift from the start, but I didn't feel like she did enough work to justify it. All the same, it was a good enough book that I was willing to keep reading the series. Continuing the trend, 4th up was The Army of Angels by Jennifer Rainey. This is the 3rd book in the Lovelace and Wick series. It is still a queer paranormal fantasy. The description reads, There's no rest for the wicked, even when the wicked are trying to retire. In the 13 years since they abandoned their demonic duties to hell, Iago Wick and Dante Lovelace have become world travelers and developed an acute aversion to responsibility of any kind. Life is sublime until an old friend comes knocking with a favor to ask. Gloria Ambrose is an angel in need. Her brothers and sisters are disappearing, and signs indicate the angels are being taken to purgatory, a treacherous land that only a demon can navigate. As Dante and Iago plunge into purgatory's depths, they uncover a madman's plot to turn angels into weapons, using the vast wasteland of the underworld as his testing ground. With the help of friends new and old, Mr. Lovelace and Mr. Wick devise a rescue plan, but peril, past lives, and amphibious beasts lurk around every corner. Not to mention, things are never what they seem in purgatory. Whose twisted mind is really behind the army of angels? Again, 4 stars. I actually think this book has a pretty good plot, especially when compared against the previous entry, but it did have a fair number of flaws as well. Mostly, though, the problem I had with this book was that it clearly expected me to have read the novella that's set before the series, but is ostensibly meant to be read second. I hadn't read it, I still haven't, so this was a bit of a problem. A character who plays a large part in the novella returns here, and the reader is expected to know her and her history with Iago. It isn't impossible to get past, but it is irritating, especially as there's nothing to indicate I needed to read the novella first. This book also suffered from an obvious twist, as well as a character that Rainey clearly wanted to be more impressive than he was. Rounding out the series, my 5th book was The Sole Proprietor by Jennifer Rainey. This is the 4th book in the Lovelace and Wick series. Again, it's a queer paranormal fantasy. The description says, When Viola Acheson last saw Iago Wick, she promised that if ever they met again, she would destroy him. Imagine his dismay one autumn afternoon upon finding her waiting for him in his parlor. But Acheson has different plans these days. Caught in a battle to save her soul, she swiftly enlists the help of Iago and his husband, Dante Lovelace, in a plot that's part deal with the devil, part supernatural heist. Madame Amelia Sly is a wicked spiritualist with one of the largest collections of stolen supernatural relics around, including an ancient scroll that's the key to Viola Atchison's salvation. It's up to Iago, Dante, and the Atchisons to execute their plot through the art of magic and a little play acting. But Madame Sly has her eyes on her own desired treasure, and she's not about to step aside without a fight, one which could bring deadly consequences. Join Messrs. Lovelace and Wick in the final installment of the Lovelace and Wick series, a tale of daring deception, magical adventure, and companionship against all odds. And, once again, 4 stars. What can I say? I liked the series. It wasn't perfect by any means, but it was fun. This book had a pretty good plot, which unfolded neatly. I had very few complaints, and mostly they were just nitpicking. There was another character here that wasn't as impressive as the other characters made him out to be, a side plot that felt more or less pointless, and I was mildly disappointed by an element of the ending, but overall this book was good. 6th up was Kokopelli's Flute by Will Hobbs. This is a fantasy. The description says, Tep Jones has always felt the magic of Picture House, an Anasazi cliff dwelling near the seed farm where he lives with his parents. But he could never have imagined what would happen to him on the night of a lunar eclipse, when he finds a bone flute left behind by grave robbers. Tep falls under the spell of a powerful ancient magic that traps him at night in the body of an animal. Only by unraveling the mysteries of Picture House can Tep save himself and his desperately ill mother. Does the enigmatic old Indian who calls himself Cricket hold the key to unlocking the secrets of the past? And can Tep find the answers in time? I bought this book as a very young child at my school book fair, and never got rid of it for one reason or another. I decided to read it now as part of the 2024 Read Your Bookshelf Challenge as a book under 250 pages. This is another book that I'm not rating, both because it's not for me, being a children's book, and because I'm not certain how well the Native American elements are handled. Setting aside any cultural issues that may or may not exist, this book was fine. It wasn't super interesting, the characters weren't anything to write home about, but it was perfectly serviceable. The main draw of this book, in my opinion, is the way it discusses the work Tep's parents are doing. His father runs a seed farm propagating rare dry climate crops and distributing them as both an act of preservation and for the sake of reducing food scarcity in areas with less rainfall. His mother is an archaeologist of sorts, studying the nests of local pack rats to get a sense of the shifting ecology and culture of the area over time through carbon dating the various objects the rats collected. Both of these topics are introduced in a way that is both interesting and approachable, and I could see them capturing a child's interest and potentially setting them on a good path. 7th, I read Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This is the first in the Farseer trilogy. It is a fantasy novel, the description says. Young Fitz is the bastard son of the noble Prince Chivalry, raised in the shadow of the royal court by his father's gruff stableman. He is treated as an outcast by all the royalty except the devious King Shrewd, who has him secretly tutored in the arts of the assassin. For in Fitz's blood runs the magic skill, and the darker knowledge of a child raised with the stable-hounds and rejected by his family. As barbarous raiders ravage the coast, Fitz is growing to manhood. Soon he will face his first dangerous, soul-shattering mission, and though some regard him as a threat to the throne, he may just be the key to the survival of the kingdom. Yet another 4 stars. I tried to read this book a few years ago, struggled with it for reasons that weren't really the book's fault, and set it aside with a vague notion that I might try again later. Since Literary Diversions has decided to do a Fitz-along, reading all the books of the realm of the Elderlings over the course of 2.5 years, I decided it was time. The audiobook was the only copy available, so that's what I got. I liked this book. There's not much else to say about it. It was fairly interesting, I liked Fitz, I loved the Fool, I plan to read more. My only real complaint for this book was that the chapters began with asides that generally fleshed out the world building, but occasionally discussed events that I felt should have been integrated into the plot. Part of the problem was likely that I was listening to the audiobook. These asides are probably more clearly delineated in a text copy. My 8th book was The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. This is the first book in the Kingsbridge series. It is historical fiction. The description says, The Pillars of the Earth tells the story of Philip, Prior of Kingsbridge, a devout and resourceful monk driven to build the greatest Gothic cathedral the world has known. Of Tom, the mason who becomes his architect, a man divided in his soul. Of the beautiful, elusive Lady Aliena, haunted by a secret shame, and of a struggle between good and evil that will turn church against state and brother against brother. This was my first DNF of the month. They made a series of this back in 2014, which I watched and enjoyed, so I bought the book and then never read it. I needed a book over 400 pages for the 2024 challenge, so I picked this one. There's nothing I can really say is wrong with this book. I read around 100 pages before quitting, but I didn't quit because it was bad. I just didn't care. Because I felt deeply apathetic about this book, I didn't really want to read it, which is a problem when it's nearly 1,000 pages. Also, for some reason, when I bought it, I thought this was a standalone, and discovering that it was the first of 5 equally long books made me significantly less interested in getting invested. I'm perfectly willing to read 5,000 pages of story if I like it, but given how I felt after the first 10%, it seemed I was probably not going to come out of it more than neutral, so I cut my losses. However, that left me needing another 400 or more page book to read. Thankfully, I checked the page count on my most recent purchase, and it came out just over. So my 9th book was Thousand Autumns, Volume 3 by Meng Shi. This is a queer martial arts fantasy. The description says, Despite the sting of Yan Wushi's betrayal fresh on his heart, Shen Chao rushes to save him from certain death, only to arrive a moment too late. Or so it seems. As rumor of Yan Wushi's demise spreads far and wide, the winds of change stir across the land. Meanwhile, Shen Chao seeks to heal Yan Wushi's grave injuries, and realizes that his understanding of the Demon Lord runs only skin deep. Yet fate does not allow the pair to remain idle for long. When an old friend reveals his true nature, Shen Chao and Yan Wushi have no choice but to aid him on a perilous mission. Only this time, humans aren't the only monsters to fear. 4 stars. I've said before that I liked this series when the 2 main characters are together, but get bored when they split up. Thankfully, this book spends nearly the entire time with the 2 together, so I liked it a lot more than the first 2. Unfortunately, one plot element made me vaguely uncomfortable, and another had a poor impact on the romance. I'm not going to discuss the details here because they are spoiler heavy, but those 2 things kept this from being a 5-star read for me. Still, I had a good enough time with it that I'll be picking up the next volume when it comes out. 10th, I read Once Upon a Devilishly Enchanting Kiss by Bree Wolfe. This is a romance novel. The description says, England 1801. Lady Louisa, daughter to the Earl of Wickerton, never thought she would ever have reason enough to hate anyone, especially not Phineas Hawke, Viscount Barrington, the man with the most wickedly dark eyes she has ever seen. Yet, at an innocent ball, Louisa is suddenly forced to realize that the man she could easily have lost her heart to has discovered her most shameful secret, and that is not all. Lord Barrington makes it a habit to tease her endlessly about it, his devilish grin and knowing eyes mocking her, testing her resolve time and time again. Struggling to maintain her composure, Louisa vows to never surrender, to never allow him to see how deeply his flippant words wound her. Anger settles in her heart, burying all tender emotions as she tries her utmost to ignore him. That, however, is easier said than done. Phineas Hawke has known the lovely Lady Louisa almost all his life. Not well, but at least from afar. They have always been acquainted. Her face is a familiar sight, and although he cannot deny that she possesses certain appealing charms, Phineas has never looked at her and seen someone other than simply one of Lord Wickerton's daughters. At least, not until another gentleman rather unexpectedly voices his partiality toward her. Suddenly, Phineas realizes that the woman he has known all his life is one he has ignored for far too long, and to his utter dismay, she has come to loathe the very sight of him. Why? He does not know. However, he will not yield easily. As it seems, neither will she. This is my second DNF, but I can complain about this one. First of all, the characters were very bland. I read quite a few chapters before I quit, and I couldn't tell you anything about either of them other than what's in that description. The bigger issue for me is that Woolf shows complete disregard for the rules. There were a lot of very rigid social rules in Regency England, and part of the fun of reading Regency romances is how the characters navigate those rules. So when the book started with Louisa being extremely rude to Phineas for, to all appearances, no reason, it seemed a little out of place. Phineas similarly acted entirely too familiar. The pair's improper behavior was bothering me, but it wasn't until Louisa sprained her ankle and Phineas carried her into her bedroom that I'd had enough. Her sister and cousin see him doing this and don't even attempt to stop him. It was a step too far for me, and I decided to quit. This one is extremely disappointing because I got like 4 free books from this author, each in a different series, and had plans to read another still. Now I don't want to read any of them. Oh well. After that, I read 10 Things That Never Happened by Alexis Hall. This is the first book in the Material World series. It is a queer romance. The description says, Sam Becker likes his job. Sure, managing a bed and bath retailer isn't exactly glamorous, but it's good work and he gets on well with the band of misfits who keep the store running. He could see himself being content here for the long haul. Too bad, then, that the owner is an infuriating git. Jonathan Forrest should never have hired Sam. It was a sentimental decision, and Jonathan didn't get where he is by following his heart. Determined to set things right, Jonathan orders Sam down to London for a difficult talk, only for a panicking Sam to trip, bump his head, and maybe accidentally imply he doesn't remember anything? Faking amnesia seemed like a good idea when Sam was afraid he was getting sacked, but now he has to deal with the reality of Jonathan's guilt, as well as the unsettling fact that his surly boss might have a softer side to him. There's an unexpected freedom in getting a second shot at a first impression, but as Sam and Jonathan grow closer, can Sam really bring himself to tell the truth, or will their future be built entirely on one impulsive lie? 4 stars. I have a very complicated relationship with Alexis Hall's novels. The first one I read was Boyfriend Material, which I absolutely loved, and which had me laughing throughout. But every book I've read since then ranged from fine to terrible. This book was certainly better than most of the other ones I've read from her, but it also wasn't as funny as I expected it to be from the description. Also, this was a Christmas book, and it didn't tell me. I don't care, I'm not a seasonal reader, and I'm not necessarily put off by Christmas novels, but I would have liked some warning. Despite liking this book a fair amount, it still left me with a feeling of dissatisfaction. I have a few suspicions as to why this is, but they're all spoilers, so I won't be going over them here. Mostly it has to do with the way things shook out around the ending, although the surprisingly reserved sense of humor may have added to it. After that, I read Something Spectacular, also by Alexis Hall. This is the second book in the Something Fabulous series. It is a queer Regency romance. The description says, Peggy Delancey's not at all ready to move on from her former flame, Arabella Tarleton, but Belle has her own plans for a love match, and she needs Peggy's help to make those plans a reality. Still hung up on her feelings, and unable to deny Belle what she wants, Peggy reluctantly agrees to help her woo the famous and flamboyant opera singer, Orfeo. She certainly doesn't expect to find common ground with a celebrated soprano, but when Peggy and Orfeo meet, a whole new flame is ignited that she can't ignore. Peggy finds an immediate kinship with Orfeo, who's just as nonconforming as she is, and just as affected by their instant connection. They've never been able to find their place in the world, but as the pair walks the line between friendship, flirtation, and something more, they may just find their place with each other. Like I said, I have a complicated relationship with Alexis Hall's books. I DNF'd this. I read Something Fabulous last June because it was free and a queer Regency romance and by Alexis Hall, who I still thought I really liked at the time. It was fine. I gave it 3 stars, but I wasn't crazy about it. I wasn't going to read Something Spectacular initially. I thought it was about Arabella falling in love, and I hated Arabella so much that spending an entire book with her sounded like torture. But when I found out it was actually about her friend Peggy stealing Arabella's love interest, I decided I'd give it a shot eventually. I decided now was a good time because I needed to replace my KU read, and reading this would knock out one of the series I need to finish. The problem is that this is another book that plays fast and loose with the rules. Something Fabulous kind of did too, but it wasn't egregious, so I let it pass, though that was one of the things I wasn't crazy about. But Something Spectacular nods at the rules in the first chapter, implying they still exist in this universe, and then promptly ignores them at every turn. So I quit. Lastly, I read Prince and Assassin by Tavia Lark. This is the first book in the Perilous Court series. It is a queer fantasy romance. The description says, Whisper doesn't remember his real name. All he knows is the elite assassin guild that raised him, and controls him with the threat of blood magic. Plagued by nightmares, he doesn't get to refuse assignments, even when his new job doesn't make sense. Infiltrate Prince Julian's court, protect him until the signal arrives, then kill him. Julian hides his own schemes behind a sordid reputation. He trusts nobody besides his brothers, and he certainly doesn't trust the aloof, beautiful new stranger at court. But he doesn't have to trust the stranger to be drawn to him, especially when he saves Julian's life. Then Julian saves Whisper too, and Whisper's reserve shatters. Beneath Julian's playboy facade is a warmth Whisper can't resist. Whisper's never been comforted before. He's never been cared for like this. As his nightmares darken, Julian's touch is his only solace. But falling in love could ruin them both, because Whisper's mission hasn't changed, and the price for failure is worse than death. 4 stars. My brother just finished reading these, and from what he said about them, they sounded interesting, so I figured I'd give them a go. Also, they're all on Kindle Unlimited, so this fulfills one of the prompts from last month that I've been struggling with. Happily, this first book was delightful. There's not much to say about this, really. I liked the characters, I liked the romance, I liked the way the plot unfolded. I plan to read the rest of the series. Right, so that's it for February. A lot of 4 stars, several DNFs, not the worst month. Now for the March TBR. I'm going to simulate the game for this month, so feel free to let me know if it's fun or a waste of time. The rules are pretty simple. I roll 8 books. If I can fit my challenge books on there, great. If not, I'll have to add them. Rolling doubles adds a book. There's no penalty for failing and no reward for doing well. It's just a way to direct my reading and make things a little more fun. Here we go. Roll 1 is a 4 and a 1. That's 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a library square, so I'll be reading Wild and Wicked Things by Francesca May, which I need to read for my book club in April. Roll 2. 2 6s. So 9 books this month and 12 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Kindle Unlimited. That'll give me a chance to read the next Perilous Courts book, Prince in Disguise by Tavia Lark. Roll 3. A 5 and a 2. 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And there's a slide, so it's a sci-fi square. The slides go in both directions, by the way. Keeps it interesting. Anyway, this will be House of Gold by C.T. Ruizzi, because it's one of the very few standalone sci-fi novels on my list, and I've got enough series happening this month. Roll 4. A 6 and a 2, so that's 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Another library book. I put Caliban's War by James S.A. Corey on hold last month, and it came in early, and I've been hoarding it, so we'll get that out of the way. Roll 5. A 2 and a 1, that's 3. 1, 2, 3. Fantasy. Since I'm well past due, and I'd like to knock the series off my list, I'll put Calling by Molly Harper in for this one. Roll 6. A pair of 3s. Joy. 6 and we add a roll. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Romance. I recently picked up The Truth About Dukes by Grace Burrows in a used bookstore, and it sounds really good, so I'll slot that in for this square. Roll 7. 5 and 2. Another 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Physical. This is an excellent chance to put in one of my challenge books. Initially, I was going to read a Redwall as a book with more than 2 POVs, but since Redwall is out, I'll read The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants by Anne Brashares. Technically, I've already read this book twice, but it's been a few years, so I'll need the refresher before I can get to the books I haven't read. Roll 8. A 3 and a 2. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Another library square. Library squares are tricky because I need the book to be available, but if I check it out right away, I've got a time limit. I'll give Alexis Hall another go with A Lady for a Duke, which I've heard is quite good and is available. Roll 9. 2 ones. Rude. That's 2, so 1, 2. Digital. How about some more Perilous Courts? Prince and Pawn by Tavia Lark. Roll 10. A 6 and a 3, that's 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Another fantasy. So I'll read the 4th Perilous Courts, Prince and Bodyguard by Tavia Lark. Roll 11. 2 6s. Joy. 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. First reads. Ironically, I'm pretty sure House of Gold is a first read, but I'll pick another. So Never Meant to Stay by Trisha Das it is. Roll 12. Last roll. A 5 and a 4. That's 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Another KU square, which means another Perilous Courts. Prince and Betrothed by Tavia Lark. Okay, so that's all the rolls, but there are, unfortunately, 3 more books that I either need or want to read this month. Technically, any of the Perilous Courts or the Grace Burroughs book would count for a book with 2 POVs, but I said I'd read A Kiss for Luck by Grace Burroughs this month, and if I don't, I may never get to it, so that's on the list too. Also, since I'm reading the rest of the series, might as well finish, so I'll throw Prince of Agony by Tavia Lark on the list. And Remnants of Filth Volume 3 by Robao Buchiro comes out on the 6th, and I'm not about to sleep on that, so it gets added as well. Can I read all 15 this month? Who knows? Hopefully, because I've scheduled them out and put Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants at the end of the month, so if I don't hit all of them, I'll miss a challenge book this month. Wish me luck. Anyway, if you like this video, I hope you'll watch more in the future. Thanks for watching this one. Bye!